got too many buttons and
Too many things.
sliders.
Mine's on. Mine is definitely on.
Okay, Jason's on and...
See, and I don't actually need one. Kris needs one, so I can talk loud enough.
Okay, Kris.
Okay, hello. I think I'm on.
But he'll turn you on.
Okay,
Now
sure.
Linda.
Now am I on?
Testing.
Testing. I did. Testing.
It is on.
I could always,
I can hear it in your head. Not over there.
Don't push in front of the speaker. There you go. You can turn me down. I'm probably really loud. There we go.
No. Whoa. This is really on. Oh, I am hot this morning. Thank you, everybody, for coming. What a busy morning. Wow, we got the full package this morning. Kids and baptisms and communion, and we're going to top it off with a very interesting session. We've talked around the perimeter of mental health issues and things going on in our community. And today, this is just going to be so cool. I want you to meet Lieutenant Leach, and he said I can call him Jason. I hadn't met him until today, but I do know Kris Graham. She was here last year. And this is the team that has implemented some new things that are working. And so they're going to talk about lots of stuff, including this soccer team that we've been hearing about. This is a big deal, and it's working well, but please help me welcome them, and so anxious to hear what you have to share with us today.
thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
And speaking of the soccer thing, Kathy assured me that the videos for the soccer and the other thing that was mentioned by the captain, that will be on Facebook. So if you want to catch those videos, we have them online on the Facebook. So just wanted to bring that up since she mentioned it.
Perfect. All right.
You want to kick us off?
All right, good morning, and thank you for having us here today. Jason and I are part of the team that actually does the day-to-day work. So you're going to hear today about some of our new programs and systems that we're using to help to work with mental health crisis. As we know, that is a number one issue that we face in our community is how do we help, how do we get to them fast enough? And so before I start with our program too, I want to talk about the 988 number for mental health crisis. And I don't know if that has been brought up before, but 988 kicked off in July. And so if you call 988 because you have a concern about someone with mental illness, you want to know more or how to find resources for mental illness, call 988. They're 24/7, and they will give you all kinds of resources and information. So I just want to put that out there. So your new number is 988. How's that? It goes with 911. So you have now 911 and now a 988.
And the numbers work very closely together. So when we were implementing 988 coming to our community and 911, how that works together, because before people didn't have a number to call. Everybody called 911, and then you got a police officer. So we're finding in our current times right now, not every call needs a police officer, and some probably are better suited for not having a police officer respond to them. So when we have 988, the wonderful thing is if somebody calls 988 and they determine through their protocols that actually we do need to send emergency responders, whether that's PD, fire, ambulance, something like that, to check on somebody's well-being, then they can transfer that call right back over to 911, and then it still gets us going to that call. So, and then also on the flip side, if somebody calls 911 and it's not a 911 response call that we need to be sent to, they can transfer the call right to 988 and then have those people get the services that they need. So it's a hand-in-hand cooperation between 911 and 988. So it is national, but when we really look at things, and I think we'll kind of dissect things down today, what's going on in our community, and really look at what's going on here versus trying to apply everything that's going on around the country, because we have a lot of good things going here. So.
We have great things going. And one thing I want to say is if you have a relative, friend, family, don't ever hesitate to call 988, even if you just want information, if you want a well-being check, because you're doing the best you can for that individual at that time. So I just want to encourage you to reach out and get help, because that's good. That's great. So with that, Jason,
with that, we should probably tell, I mean, everybody knows who Kris Graham is because she's like a staple of our community. So, but go ahead, do you want to,
no, and
the people that don't know who
so
you are?
I am the CEO of Southeastern Behavioral Healthcare. I've been there for 20 years. And so we've seen a lot of change in the field of mental illness, drug and alcohol use. And so we are pleased that we could be part of the new programs that we have partnering with the police department. So Jason, you want to talk a little bit?
So my name is Jason Leach. I'm our operations lieutenant for the Sioux Falls PD. Been with the PD just starting my 19th year with the PD. So I enjoyed my whole run through that time. I've been in various different parts of the department, worked in a lot of different shifts and different sections and such. My current role as operations lieutenant, I oversee our school resource officer program, our community resource officer program, and then this fine line that says other duties as assigned, and some of you have probably had jobs where you have that, and then that takes over most of your day-to-day operations. And so, but as we get through talking with mental health, and obviously it goes hand in hand, I heard there's maybe some questions about school safety and some things like that. If there's some things like that at the end that you want to talk about, I guess I'm the guy for that. So married, 3 kids, busy as all get out, but enjoying this work. And my role right now with the police department, I've been able to partner with a lot of our external partners, community partners, on pushing initiatives forward, which has been very beneficial. So when we start looking at mental health, know that we look broadly in our nation at what's going on in other places, but then we want to go look at those too. So Kris and I and a team from Southeastern and a team from the police department, we actually took a trip down to Tucson earlier this year in February, March, somewhere there, March. We went down and toured some of their facilities, got some ideas, but guess what? Not everything they do will work here, but there's some really cool things that we can implement, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Is it kind of got us on this springboard, if you will, into what we did this summer. So. All right.
So with that, do we want to start with, you want to talk a little bit about training for your police officers?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, we were told that you had Chief Toom and then you had Mayor Tanakin, and lots of good discussion, lots of thoughts, and we kind of cursor in around the edges of how mental health fits into this. And so when we talk about law enforcement officers, obviously every law enforcement officer goes through the law enforcement standards and training, which takes place in Pierre. We're able to host some of them in Sioux Falls now, but it's that length of training, that long training, that initial academy training that every officer goes through. There's mental health training in that. But I tell you what, when we're going through that training, you're drinking from a fire hose because they're just putting everything at you, and you're trying to learn all this stuff in 13 weeks of how to do this job. So then we really value that continued training. So when we have our officers back at our department, we want to break those things down and dissect them a little bit more. So we have annual in-service training as well. So we have a block of training every year that our officers have to go through revolving around mental health. And so we have some initial training that our officers have, and then we have some advanced training that we go to. And so there's a mental health first aid class that our officers can sign up to go to. There's adolescent mental health, which actually I make it mandatory for all of our SROs, our school resource officers, to go to adolescent mental health training. We also sent our SROs through the NASRO, the National Association of School Resource Officers, has an adolescent mental health training that we sent our school resource officers specifically to for helping them give some tools in their toolkit for when they're at school and doing those things. But one of the most valuable trainings that we've found and implementing in our department is crisis intervention team training. So it's CIT. And so when we start talking about that, we have an amazing partnership in our community with Southeastern and various community partners. And Southeastern's been a great asset in helping lead this training. And it's a week-long training. And I know Kris has got a lot of great details to talk to you about CIT and how that works. And I'll let you talk about some of the details, and I can talk about how because I went through the class, and so how it benefited me as a police officer. So.
Perfect. Okay, so the CIT is offered twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. It's 40 hours long, so it takes a whole week. We get officers from across the state, and the focus is mental health, and drug and alcohol. And so for every hour of those 40 hours, we are emphasizing trauma, dual diagnosis, which means if you have someone who has a drug and alcohol problem, but also someone with mental health, how do we work with that together and try to get resources and get them to the right place? We talk about child and adolescent mental illness, which I believe our calls have increased because of the adolescents and the drug and alcohol use that we see. We do a lot of training working with the veterans in our community and our state. We talk a lot about medications. Police officers need to know what is somebody on and what could that be and how do we work with that. Or if they're not taking their medications, that's an important piece to your work. We give tours, so the police officers get to tour Avera Behavioral, they tour Fifth Street, they tour VOA, any place where we have programs that the police officers should know they're available in order to use, right, after they're picked up. We do a lot with PTSD, and with that we talk about our eye movement therapy. And so we're doing a lot of trauma-based things with the police officers so they can understand what we do with our job. A lot of de-escalation, right? That's the most important thing. How do we talk somebody down? So we know that we do a lot of practice and role playing on how we don't want it power to power. That doesn't help anybody. Sure. And so we do a lot with de-escalation. We also do a simulation, and it's called hearing voices. And so they have to sit there because someone who is a schizophrenic often has hallucination, and they also hear voices. And so we have earphones that play what someone on schizophrenic will be hearing, and then we give them an article to read and see if they can pass a test with all the noises going on in their head. But we try to give it real life experiences to what they may be running into out in the field.
Tell you what, that test specifically was one of the more difficult things I've done, because you have these voices in your head. You're saying you're worthless, you're no good, you're this, and it's just putting you down, and you're supposed to read this article, comprehend what's going on, and then answer questions after that. And so it really puts you in a person's shoes. That's what they're encountering and what they're going through, and how you can be empathetic in that situation, how you can work and apply the training. One of the other things that I love too is the tours, because as a police officer, we work with people on the street, and then we're talking about these places. Well, if you haven't ever toured the inside of these places, you don't know how to explain those to people and what they might experience when they go there. And so having that valuable experience, and then when you talked about the de-escalation and putting people in situations, so the officers that are going through this training aren't the brand new officers that just started 6 months ago or a year ago. These could be officers with 2-3 years on, it could be officers with 8, 9, 10 years on. So that apply to go through this training. And when you're in these scenarios, we have some of our collegiate drama club actors come in, and they can be really good and really they can play the part, and great for them, because that challenges our officers. It puts them in that situation. That reality-based training is really what we want our officers to get to. We do that for use of force, we do that for other situations. We want to get reality-based training. So let's put them in a reality-based training piece with mental health and how to talk to somebody, how to remain calm, how to use these different techniques that you've learned throughout the week to apply in that situation. And so it really challenges them, gets them out of their comfort zone maybe a little bit, but then they have so many more tools that they can use when they're out on the street encountering different people. So
CIT, great program. I believe the Sioux Falls has 192 trained CIT officers. So it's a great help for us when we get called out to go with them. So.
It is, and our officers, after they graduate from the 40-hour week or 40-hour and week of training for CIT, that gives them the ability, and maybe Kris, you can talk about it a little bit more. But if we're out on talking to somebody and they are having some suicidal thoughts, or maybe some thoughts of some self-harm or depression, stuff like that, our officers are actually trained now, and there's actually a state statute that protects them, and they're able to deem, if somebody obviously needs help and they're actively suicidal, we want to get them help. We want to get them through mobile crisis team, which we'll talk about a little bit, or maybe all the way to behavioral health for that assessment. But if it's somebody that's just kind of down on their luck and those type of things, our officers are actually trained to be able to de-escalate that situation, come up with a safety plan, and work with that person and leave them in their house and not have to remove them. One of the things that we do rely on when we get to that situation, if we do encounter somebody we have what's called probable cause to place on a mental health hold, then we're going to start working with our mobile crisis team. I'm talking the threshold even below that, where somebody's just maybe a little depressed. We haven't reached that threshold where they're a danger to themselves or others. But we can talk to them, we can work on a safety plan, we can get them some help and connect them to services at that level as a CIT trained officer. We have that certification, if you will, at that point. But if kind of transitioning into our mobile crisis team, if we've worked with somebody and they've told us that, I have thoughts of self-harm or I'm going to hurt somebody else, and we reach that level where we meet that probable cause to place them on a mental health hold, we have a great tool here in our community called the Mobile Crisis Team, and I'll let Kris talk about that. So.
Good. Well, in 2011, so 11 years ago, we started the Mobile Crisis Team. And it was the police and Southeastern who decided to partner so that we could get to people, keep them out of the hospital, out of jails, in their own home, so they could go back to work the next day and so they could go to school. Mobile Crisis Team serves children and adults. The difference is if we get called on a child, we have to have the parents sign off and be there for us to work with them. But the Mobile Crisis Team goes all over. So it's in the community, it's in school districts, it's wherever children may be having suicidal issues, and we go directly to them. So in the past 11 years, we have saved 5,000 people from going into hospitals and into jail and remaining in their homes. It's a great program that we have worked together. What happens, the police are contacted, they go evaluate the situation. If they deem it is necessary to maybe put somebody on a hold, that has to be a criteria, they will call us. We have to be there within 10 to 15 minutes would be we hope we're there that fast. And so then we come in, the police stay with us long enough so that we can do an evaluation, make sure it's something that we feel we can de-escalate and work with. Then the police officers are released and they leave us. Now we can always call them back and get them if we need extra help, but it has worked great because the scene has been cleared for us. There aren't weapons, there aren't anything going on. There isn't a medical emergency that we wouldn't maybe not be able to take care of, because oftentimes we do decline calls, and we decline those calls because they don't have enough to be put on hold, and they may have taken overdose and may need medical help. And so and they may be too violent. So if that's the case, because the team, the Mobile Crisis Team, as social workers and counselors, we don't carry guns, we don't wear vests, we go in plain clothes, because oftentimes the uniform can cause more anxiety than working with somebody in plain clothes. And so we've found that program to be very, very beneficial.
So in my career, I remember starting out as a new officer, and somebody would present or call and say, or somebody would call on their friend or their boyfriend, their girlfriend or something, and say, well, they said we're breaking up. They said they're gonna kill themselves. Well, we go, did you say that? Yes. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it at all. It was out of anger, and we're going through this breakup, and I said it. Well, guess what? As a police officer, you said you were gonna hurt yourself. You confirmed. You told somebody else it, and now you just confirmed to me that you said you were gonna do it. So I had to place them on a hold, and we had to take them in. They had to be evaluated at an emergency department, and then they had to be placed on a 24-hour hold, which means they are seen by a doctor within that 24-hour time period. And I would assume a majority of those were immediately released, and that person was right back out because they weren't a danger to themselves or others. But we had met that protocol, and we had no other way to do anything with that person. We had no other alternatives. And so when Mobile Crisis Team came around, we said, this is fantastic. This is great for our population, our clients that we're dealing with. It's great for the police officers, and it's great for the system overall, because taking somebody to a Vera Behavioral Health costs a lot of money and a lot of time and all of that invested when this person didn't need that level of care. And so if we can provide a level of care in their situation where they're at right now and meet their needs, then we're doing a better service for that person, for the community, for all of our community partners involved. And so it takes a lot less time, because obviously, I don't know if anybody's sat through an ER visit in the middle of the night or anything like that, how long that takes to get people through, get those checked out and get them moved on. So Kris mentioned too, we want to make sure our community partners are safe, and so that's why our officers are there first. You may have heard of other jurisdictions or other cities where they have these community teams where they're just sending people out. But first, twofold on that, our statutory requirement says that officers have to be the ones to call out mobile crisis team. The doctor can't call them out, the school counselor can't call them out, only can be called out by law enforcement that's developed probable cause for a mental health hold to be placed. And so that really sets the standard for that. So we're already going to that call, and then we're evaluating the person, de-escalating the situation, but also we have to make sure the person's going to want to talk to mobile crisis team, because if they're not going to talk to them at all, they can't create a safety plan, they can't ensure the safety of this individual going forward. And so that's one of the things that our officers are really trained to do, is to look at, help de-escalate that situation, and then see, is this person really a good fit for mobile crisis team? And a majority of them are, and like Kris said, 5,000 people have been diverted away from having to go to Vera Behavioral Health and go through that hold process where they were able to just be seen in their house. And without this program, that would have been 5,000 more people that would have had to go through that process. And so it's a great program for us, it's a great program for our community. And so I think you have some more stats on it too, right?
I have some stats, but the positive to this is that after we have them, then they get follow-up resources. So we're not just seeing them and walking away. They get phone calls within 24 hours. They get services. We do follow-up with them in person. So the whole wraparound piece to mental health, we may be able to stop the crisis, but we need to be able to follow up with services, right? Because we know a suicide may only be minutes in the time of someone's thinking. And if we can get there quickly and stop that, that's great. But what do we do then to move the person on and give them stability and to go on with their life? So it's a good match, because we have the service and treatment piece of that too. So just a couple facts about mobile crisis. We have a 94% diversion rate. So that means when we go in, there are often times we have to say no because of criteria that they don't meet for us to stay with them. But that's a very high diversion rate for a program in order for people to stay in their homes. The majority of people we serve are males, and the average age is 21 to 30. Now we have all ages, but the highest number that we've done in the last year are between 21 and 30 years of age. So I just wanted to share that with you. Okay.
So one of the things when we talk about mental health in our community and how we're working to address some of the issues and come along with like our community partners and such, I believe did we have the established year in there? I can't remember what year. About 3 years ago, because I was newly promoted lieutenant, and we had just started this process. So three and a half years ago, the Chief Burns at the time and Mayor Tenhaken really looked and said, hey, we want to focus on mental health. We know it's up and coming even more and more in our community. And the police department, we'll talk about how we're trying to move some of those things away from the police department, but obviously when people don't know who to call, they don't call the Ghostbusters, they call the police. And so we get the call. And so the chief said at that time, Chief Burns said, hey, let's look at having a community resource officer that focuses on mental health. And so when we started looking at that, we designed a job description for having one of our individuals. We have 3 community resource officers, and 2 of them, all 3 of them have their own unique focus. One focuses on a lot of the community events and organizing, and so he organizes like the trunk or treats and those type of things, and the shopping with a cop things at Christmas, and all coffee with a cop and donuts with the police and all that kind of stuff. And so he does all those things. And then the other one really focuses on like safety and site surveys and stuff like that in our community. So making sure that if a business calls in and says, hey, I want to make sure we're doing everything we can to be safe, he'll come out and do the site survey and talk about that. And so And then we really wanted somebody to focus on mental health. So they kind of overlap as well, but Sarah Van Voorst is our mental health community resource officer. And what her job is to look at the cases that are coming in, because if our officers are out working with somebody or interacting with somebody, and obviously we have a lot of co-occurring disorders, somebody with mental health concerns, but also substance use disorder as well going on, and our officers are getting called to that we don't really have, the officers on the street might not have all the tools they need to be able to find that person, get them connected with housing or those type of things and stuff like that. So Sarah gets a lot of referrals back from our officers that say, hey, I dealt with Bill on the street and Bill's going through this right now. What do you have anything you can help Bill out with? And so she starts looking at, it's kind of like a case management type of system. Well, then that kind of evolved into looking at, boy, we have a lot of people in our community, a small number of people in our community that use a lot of services in our community. And so, and I'm not sure if yes, it is a true fact that there's a small percentage that use a lot of services between the two emergency departments, between the jail, between the link, Vera Behavioral Health, your office. And so they revolve through the system, and they're just kind of filtering through the system. And so Sarah's involved with our community, our care conference every week, and they talk about individuals in our community and hey, has Bill on your radar? Well, yeah, Bill's been to the Sanford ED 5 times this week. Well, he's been to McKinnon 6 times, and he's been to jail 10 times, or where is it at? Where is he going? And then how can we as a group and a community focus around and help Bill and get him some help that he needs? And so they started looking at the top 10 utilizers of services in our community. And I tell you what, in this time frame, Sarah's worked through the top 10 and helped them with our community partners, not just alone by the police department, but helped establish housing, got reconnected with counselor services, reconnected with family members, because sometimes family members are eager and willing to help these individuals, but can't find them or can't locate where they're at and what they're doing. Or maybe it's as simple as, hey, I don't know where my ID's at. I can't go get a job because I can't find my ID. And then that revolves into this whole circumstance. And so how can we help those individuals? And Sarah has a lot of anecdotal evidence and the stories that she can talk about, but she's worked through the top 10 already. There's a new top 10, don't mind you. I mean, it keeps filling in. But those people are people that kind of fell through the cracks before and were just being seen here or there or different places. Well, now we have kind of a little bit of a clearinghouse where we're talking about and we're sharing information. We have an MOU in place where we can share information back and forth, and we can talk about, and it's that continuity of care really for these individuals in our community, because they need help and we're part of that care team, and so we want to be involved in it. And so when we're looking at this, I know Sarah had some stats that the SFPD saw a 65% increase in mental health calls for service from 2013 to 2020. And so that's huge. That's a number of calls that our officers are going to every day on the street. And so like when we talked about the training and experience that our officers need to deal with those, it was April of 2020. So I was pretty close on the time frame for when it started. So, but when our officers encounter somebody that needs to be placed on a mental health hold as well, all those case reports go right to Sarah as well. So she can start looking at and look for trends and go, hey, this person was seen at this ED 5 times last week. Now they've been placed on a hold. What's going on here? Well, hey, their counselor is at Southeastern, or their counselor is with Avera or wherever. Hey, let's reach out to them. Say, hey, we've had this person a number of times. How can we get them back in, get them services, maybe get them back on medication that they haven't been stopping and picking up, and those type of things. So that's really her position in a nutshell, and that was a big thing for the city and for the police department to bite off at that time. But it's been very beneficial for us, and Sarah's been involved in a lot of stuff in the community, and we're going to talk about a couple other things that she's been involved with partnering with Southeastern. So
because we have new things, so that's our exciting part, to tell you we've been creative, and how do we stop people from calling 911, and why are they calling? And oftentimes people with mental illness are lonely. And so if they call 911, somebody will answer, right? And so we had to figure out, how do we switch that? And so we started with a Tuesday co-responder team. And so what happened is Sarah and one of our social workers ride together every Tuesday. And we picked one day just to try it because we're piloting all these things. But after 6 months, 50% of the people we saw were no longer calling 911. They were in treatment or receiving service. We joined them community. People need somebody to contact and call, right? We all need a friend, and we need a place to go. So that has really helped. And so we now are looking at 911 calls still. We go out every Tuesday. And those that are on that level of care, then we go out as a team and contact them and see if we can get them into services. What do they need? Do they need housing? Do they need food? What is it that they don't have? And the community is very resource rich, if I can say that. We have a ton of support all over our community for those resources. So that Tuesday ride along has been very, very successful, helping with the 911 calls, but really helping with the individuals that we are actually making contact with, because they cycle in and out of the jail for food, for housing, right? We'll see it now when the weather gets colder, they're calling more and more. So that's our job. We've taken that on, but we've been 50% successful.
It's been very successful. We've really enjoyed that partnership. I know Sarah and Stacy have a great friendship and partnership that they work on, but they each have their own specialty as well. And so they can go out and talk to people. They can, like Kris said, when they're talking to these individuals, a lot of times that might be somebody that's going to be potentially called in on or call in themselves. And so if we have that touch point, we can check on them. Hey, how's things going this week? Have you gone to your doctor visit this week? Hey, we know you have a counseling appointment tomorrow. You're going to go, right, tomorrow? And, or hey, have you stopped down to Fifth Street and picked up your medication this week? If not, hey, let's give you a ride down there. Let's go get it right now. And so being proactive in that movement has really been helpful for us. And this is definitely a program where we want to continue, and we value the partnership with Southeastern in providing an employee for us to partner with, because Stacy has access to their information, we have access to our information. We do have a joint sharing agreement between, so they can work together to find out, who is this person's counselor, who is their doctor, or maybe I know that, hey, they've had this many police calls, or we were called out on them last night, let's go check on them today. And so those are the types of things that they each bring to the table, and it benefits them to work together on that. And so, because neither one of them would be successful without the other's information. So
it's a great partnership. And one thing that we do once that we find them, and if they qualify for Southeastern services, it's called SMI, severely mentally ill. It's federal funding for adults. And if they qualify for our program, then everything that we do for them going from that point forward is free. So they get medications, they get psychiatric, they get doctors, they get counselors, they get whatever they need. We have an employment agency that works right out of Southeastern, so we help them get jobs. Jason was talking about people, when they're in jail, oftentimes they lose their benefits. And so we have a benefit specialist right on site that helps them get driver's license and their Medicaid cards and anything that they would need to make them successful, like you had talked about. So it's a great partnership because we do different pieces for them, but it's great support. And we need to do that to get them stabilized and back into the community. So anyway, but from there, we have an exciting thing, right?
So the next thing that kind of morphed off of our Tuesday co-responder event was we really dissected and looked at some communities across our nation and more, and I learned some more at some conferences I was just at in the last month and a half. But this co-responder model where you have a law enforcement officer in a car and you have a mental health professional in the car together, and they're responding to calls for service. So the difference between our Tuesday follow-up is Tuesday follow-ups, they're looking at their case studies and stuff like that and saying, hey, we need to go find this person, we need to go talk to them, we want to get them back into the services. The co-responder model is they're in a car together, and they're driving around and they're going to the acute 911 calls that are going on right now. So they don't know what they're going to next. That next call that comes in, they're going to get sent to anything that's mental health driven. And the nice thing is, we started this co-responder pilot project this summer, and so as many of you are well aware, staffing is always an issue with anything you do. And so being in charge of the school resource officers and having the opportunity to look at my school resource officer team. And during the summer, obviously, school's not in session, so we have other duties for them to do. And so we looked at one of our officers and said, hey, I think you'd be really good at this. And he was, and he said, yeah, I'll do that. I'll step into that role for the summer months. We're going to run this program, a pilot project over the summer months. We said 10 weeks. A couple things came up that we cut it down a little bit, about 7 weeks, I suppose, was when we got a number of times we were able to run it. But Kris was able to provide 4 different staff members from her office that kind of rotated through. And so Officer Parrott and then the 4 mental health professionals from Southeastern kind of rotated through riding with him on various days of the week. And we ran it Monday through Friday, and we ran it during the day hours. Obviously, mental health calls aren't locked into just 8 to 4, but we had to start somewhere. And so we really tried to start there. And we advertised it out to our officers, the officers on the street. And we started looking at things, and they were responding to calls, and our co-responder unit would say, hey, I'll go to that call. That call sounds like it's mental health driven. I'll go to that call. Our dispatchers were getting used to it too and saying, hey, let's send our co-responder unit to that call. Well, then the officers on the street started going, hey, I'm on this call. I'm working with so-and-so. I think you would be a great fit for this. So they'll call them over and have them come help. And so what our Officer Parrott, if he was here, he just talked at a community event the last week and talked about his experience with it. He said, officers walk into situations and, you have this uniform on and it's command presence right away and you're in charge and this and that. Well, guess what? Some people don't want to talk to you. I mean, there's no laughing matter about it. I mean, some people just don't want to talk to somebody in uniform, especially if you're going through a mental health crisis right now. It might be a little intimidating. You might have some, trauma that you've had before. Bad experiences, those type of things. And so what he found is he said, as long as the scene is safe and this individual is not a danger to me or my partner here, why wouldn't I let them talk to them? And so she's like, hey, I'm Officer so-and-so with the police department, and this is my friend here, and Stacy's going to talk to you, or Kim's going to talk to you. And then let them talk and kind of just take that step back, and then watching people just open up and talk to this person who's just dressed in normal civilian clothes and has that experience and knowledge, education, and background to kind of draw out some of those things that we need to understand. Maybe it is somebody that needs law enforcement intervention, but most of the time it wasn't. And it was somebody that either the Southeastern worker knew the person or was able to relate back, yep, this person has a counselor over here or somewhere over there, let's get them reconnected. But some of the success stories that they really found were just stopping out with some of our people that were holding a sign, saying hungry or whatever. They stop out and just say, hey, what's going on? What do you need? And one of the guys, Officer Parrott, will tell a story that says, he goes, hi, I don't have an ID, I don't have this, and he goes, I can't get a job without an ID. And so they're like, well, hey, would you like some help with that? And he goes, you're gonna help me? And he's like, yeah, that's what we're here to do. We're this car that helps people. And he's like, so then the Southeastern worker had their connections to help get this person to the DMV to make sure they had all the information they needed to get their license, because we all know how fun that is to go get a license. So they made sure they got all their stuff. This guy got a license. This was the beginning of the summer, so he got his license. He was able to secure a job and was able to get some housing lined up through help from Southeastern. And then they ran into him. They saw him walking on the street, so they stopped to talk to him. Like, hey, how's it going? And he's like, you're the car that helps people. He goes, here, listen here. He goes, I got my license. He goes, I'm in housing. He goes, I got a job now. He goes, I'm not having to stand out here and do this. And so that was one of the most impactful things for our officer. They also said, in that area where they were working, they worked all over town, but downtown area, that downtown corridor area, and they're walking to the Bishop Dudley one day, and it was the two of them walking in, and they're like, hey, you're the officers that help people, right? And it's like, man, we're all here to help you, but they have this connection now because they're bringing along this mental health professional that has access to other resources that we may not have access to, and so they found great benefit in this service and providing it. We ran the pilot over the summer months, and we're still compiling all of our data and everything else, but it looks like a really good program that we want to look at how we include it more readily available to our community, to our police department, using the services from Southeastern. I was just at a national conference 2 weeks ago, and the Denver police chief was talking. And Denver started off with a co-responder program. They started off with 4 co-responders. So, I mean, you look at us, 1, they had 4 for the whole Denver PD. So, I mean, we're doing pretty good right now where we're at. Well, they saw such a value in the co-responder model that they now have 40 co-responders. And so they provide 24/7 coverage. And then I'm not going to steal your staff here, but he hired 40 mental health professionals on the PD. I don't know how he found them, but he hired 40 mental health professionals that are now employees of the Denver PD that ride co-responder, and they have 24/7, 365 coverage with their co-responder units in Denver PD because they've saw such a great value in it. On the flip side, one of the things that people don't often think about is I was at a different conference and listening to the Yakima County Sheriff from Washington State talk about their co-responder model. And he said, you know what, it's great. And we talked about all the good things that it's doing in our community, but he goes, one of the unintended consequences was what it's doing for the officers as well, because now you have this mental health professional riding with you in the car all day, so you're talking about different things, you're talking about stuff, and so he goes, man, our officers are getting great benefit from talking with people as they're driving around doing stuff too. So he goes, as a sheriff, he goes, I love it. He goes, and it takes a little bit. I don't know. I mean, we use the adage in law enforcement that cops don't like it the way it is, and they don't like change. So, or they don't like new things, and they don't like the way it is. So, but this is a hurdle that we're working on getting over. And I think the officers that had good experiences, well, everybody had good experiences with the co-responder model this summer. The ones that got to experience it saw the value in it, and so that's one of the things that we're looking at, how we continue that as a department, how we continue that partnership with Southeastern. So.
That we're looking at to add to the co-responder is peer support, and you probably hear a lot about that. Like, how do we have people who've gone through this that are stable and willing to go along with the social worker and the police to meet that person where they are? And we in Tucson saw how valuable peer support was. So in January, we have 2 of our clients that are going to begin being part of the peer support program. And so they have to go through all kinds of training, they have to go through testing. So we're taking people that have some mental health issues anyway, and now we're making them like we have to go to a week of training, and we send staff with them. But I think the value of having them out and being able to talk to people where they are and they've gone through that experience and letting them know there's hope. Like, if you work with them, you can become stabilized and we can get you into programs. And so, I mean, that's a really good plus. I mean, co-responder could be a really, really, it is a great program, and it could even get better. Yeah.
This is so exciting, I can hardly stand it. I want to know if you would take some questions.
Sure, yes,
Yeah.
yes. I know we're out of time, whatever.
Are we running out of
Yeah,
time?
I think we
Okay.
talked.
Oh.
We
I
talked.
just don't want to run out because I want to.
Chris and I can talk for a long time.
Yeah, you
so.
got the 2 that talk a lot here.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Well, we can go just a little bit longer too, since church kind of ate a little.
So we have excuse.
Okay.
okay.
But
Something that comes up, you say, but I have to tell you this, but.
yeah,
I thought maybe
Yeah.
you'd like-
I'll be the
Yeah.
runner.
That'd be great.
Did you want to say something about the soccer program?
Yeah, so the community soccer program that's been going on, I think you guys have heard a little bit about it from different from the mayor, from the chief. What a great program and you probably know the background on it already, but as police officers, so our police chief, John Toom, is an avid soccer player. He actually coaches one of the teams. He probably told you that. We have, I believe, 5 or 6 other officers that participate every week at those events to help coach. But then also, it's kind of nice that, they don't show up in uniform. They're not acting as police officers. And so Chief Toom, I don't know if he told you the story about, but he said one of the kids, he shows up for practice, like maybe it's like the second practice or whatever, and he's like, I know you. And he's like, oh, do you? And he goes, you're the police chief. And he's like, oh, really? He goes, where'd you see that? I saw you on TV. And so then the kids figured out he was a police chief, but they had already established this relationship with just this adult male that was investing time and effort into these kids. And our officers that are participating in this aren't doing it as police officers, they're doing it as mentors, as people that want to invest in our community and have a love for soccer and want to see that continue. But you have staff as well. So.
Yes, so we were approached. Am I on? Oh, there I am. Okay, I thought I got lost for a minute. we were approached by Randall Beck, who heads up this soccer league for children who are not part of the city league. And he came to us. Now I have to tell you, when people come to our office, sometimes they get nervous because, we're all clinical people, right? And they're looking at us like, is it safe to talk? We're like, yes, we are not evaluating you. Come on in. And so he told his story, and he said one of the survey questions was, we would like to have mental health available so parents could work with them and children, because we serve all the children in the neighborhoods. And so we did. Every Saturday, we had a team of social workers, counselors that took activities. And so we had families and we had kids. And he said it will last about an hour and a half. Well, after the first Saturday, the team comes back. He goes, okay, it was over 3 hours. But we had 200 people that came to us and did the activities and talked about their needs. And I'll tell you the exciting thing, the staff, when they came back, said to me, parents and the kids, the soccer league is amazing because of the support of the parents. Every Saturday they were there cheering for their kids, and they had an activity they could do together to build family relations. And it was just our hearts are like, oh my gosh, look at how this is working. So to Randall Beck, bravo for his insight, for seeing that and allowing us to be there, because we gave out a lot of information about how to get resources to them. So it's just a great program that the city's doing.
One over there.
Hi. Thanks for the great presentation. So my question has to do with those individuals that are recycling through the system. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to capture that individual before they get to that stage and give them the mental health that they need?
We look at each other. Yeah.
Well, so from our side, we are in the jails. We are all over town. We have counselors in every, we help provide counseling for the Link, for Bishop Dudley, for Glory House, for any of those. We help give mental health to them. So your question is, we probably see them, right? And a couple years ago, we put our heads together to say, okay, how do we stop the recycling? And they may be going through jail on not major crimes, but it's like petty crimes to get themselves back into jail because it's warm. Like I said, it's a place to sleep. So we have those names. And so some of our people that we visit with Sarah and the Tuesday group are the recycling. We get names and we go follow up. Those at the Link that have been there multiple times, we are reaching out to them, like, what do you need for services, so that you're not going back to the Link and staying there. So it's a good question. So we do end up getting it after a time. We do get their names. And
one of the things too that touch on a program that's just up and coming too, and it's not your program, it's not my program. We're working on. I know other people have great ideas too, so Chief Toom actually had this idea, and I'm not sure if anybody saw the article that I think Kello did on the Journey On program in Rapid City. That's a community-based program that goes out in the community and works with people that are homeless, that maybe need jobs, maybe need this and that, but they're responding to calls that, I'm not used to having a mic on. I talk with my hands a lot. But police are getting these calls for somebody, let's say, sleeping in a park or something like that. Does that need a police response necessarily? Journey On in Rapid City is sending this Journey On team now to go talk to this individual, see if they can help them and do those things. So Chief Toom really challenged Urban Indian Health here in Sioux Falls to look at that, and they are furthering that mission, and they're working, and their CEO just talked at a conference I was at this week, and they now have a name for their program, and we're working on their pilot too that can help go out and respond to some of these calls in our community on that level that can help people with housing. Maybe this person, because if I encounter this person at the park and they're intoxicated and they can't care for themselves, our option is take them to jail or take them to the Link. This group might say, hey, where's your family at? Or is your family available to help take care of you too? And they might be able to give them a ride to where their family's at, or to do types of things like that maybe we can't have. But also that time investment piece, because our officers are going to call. We don't have the time to spend trying to figure out all that goes wrong with this issue that's going on, because it's not just, you're not sleeping in the park for the one, I'm not going to solve that in 5 minutes of talking to you. So how can we work with some of our community partners? So South Dakota Urban Indian Health is stepping up and looking at some options in that regard too. And I am not going to say the name right, but Wo'okie is the name of the program that they're starting. So Journey On is really easy to say. Wo'okie, which I'm getting used to saying now, is going to be the program that's going to start in Sioux Falls. So we're still working on designing that, but again, the community stepping up and helping is really what it takes, because a lot of things were put onto law enforcement over the years that necessarily we weren't the best suited to handle, but if there's nobody else to do them, they send us. And so we're really in the market to say, hey, if there's safe alternatives to having people in the community, groups in the community step up and be involved in stuff, we support that.
So the question is, so what can the church do?
Yeah, so your support into these organizations that are out doing things, from Southeastern to Urban Indian Health to the services that like the Bishop Dudley provides and those type of things, giving to those type of organizations that are helping people in that regard, coming and bringing stuff. Unfortunately, sometimes people are servant hearts that we have, bringing stuff to people, and like we had a church that was bringing stuff to Heritage Park and dropping off all these meals and all these sacks and stuff. Well, unfortunately, that just all got left all over in the park and was a mess in the park. So sometimes the unintended consequence of a good deed sometimes, but if we're helping serve at the banquet and we're helping support the mission of the Bishop Dudley House, the Union Gospel Mission, those type of places that are really working to help people, that's I think the best way. Obviously prayers are always great to help support those missions. But volunteering at the banquet and serving meals. I mean, if you haven't seen the new Banquet West, it's a great facility. Lots of families, lots of kids there eating. So it's a great thing to get involved in that way.
And I just want to put a plug in for homeless, because a lot of our agencies all serve homeless in some way or the other. And so as it's getting to be wintertime, socks, gloves, hats, we cannot keep enough socks on hand for them. And you can drop them off at any of the agencies and they would be happy to have them. So I'm just saying, as the winter, a good question, because we can always use that food, canned food for families. We serve over 3,000 children and families, and food is one thing, canned goods. So we had somebody that did a drive for us. Well, now with the holidays coming, we put together bags to send home with kids and their families so they have food. So just a thought, if the church wanted to do stuff like that, that always is very helpful.
The backpack programs, Feeding South Dakota,
Yeah,
those type of
and
things
they
are
all can
fantastic.
use.
So,
Yes.
yep. Everybody wants to get to lunch.
Yeah, look at that. We're
past
running over.
brunch already.
Thank
It's
you.
lunchtime now.
Well, and
so.
thank you for having us
It
today.
is
too.
lunchtime, and this hour has gone so fast, and we are just encouraged by you. This problem just feels overwhelming as we watch the news and as we look at our community. So this day of what's working has been fabulous, absolutely fabulous, and I hope that it prompts us, as we think back on these sessions and stuff, to pray for our men in blue and to pray for the people who are making a difference, and the weight of these programs day in and day out on these servants can't even put words around it. But I hope it will prompt us to remember to pray for them, and please thank them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Good work.
Thank you.